The act of being free from bondage. It speaks to a process of liberation from influence, control, or the power of another from slavery. It is freedom from a system or systems of oppression. Emancipation in St. Lucia, the Caribbean, or the West Indies spans continuous, courageous, and critical attempts by the region's inhabitants, beginning with the first peoples, the Amerindians, to take back their humanity and reject European slavery and colonization. Enslaved Africans increased and sustained revolutionary activities during the late 18th to 19th century throughout the region's French, Dutch, Spanish, and British colonies. These revolts also influenced unrest among the region's indentured laborers in the British colonies. The Emancipation celebration is a story of African and indigenous peoples' triumph over European white supremacy. It is to remind our people of the victorious struggles of their ancestors and to engage their input in building of a new society, a society representing their own ideals, own cultural, social, economic, and political development, which are the prerequisites for a free and independent nation and region.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good day to you wherever you are, and welcome to this edition in the continuing series on Nation Beat, dedicated to examining the efforts by St. Lucia, along with the rest of the Caribbean, to put the whole issue of emancipation in context. And in our discussion today, we will be going through the normal exercise of looking at from whence we cometh, where we're coming from, where we would like to go, and of course where to begin. And the discussion today is coming against the background or prior to the official opening of Emancipation Month 2024, which is going to be the third of three initially announced on the 1st of August 2021 by the Prime Minister of St. Lucia in his very first national address after the July 26, 2021 election. In our discussion today, we are graced with the presence of Ms. Ramona Henry Wynn, the Executive Director of the Cultural Development, the CDF, the Cultural Development Foundation, Raisa Joseph, an independent member of the Emancipation Committee, and Cecil Charles, representing the Archaeological and Historical Society, as well as the Church of England, the Anglican Church. And of course, I'm Earl Buski, who will be taking us through our discussion today. I would have liked us to start off with the brief address made by the Prime Minister that I referred to on the 1st of August 2021, because in that address he put in context what he intended for Emancipation Month to be. In other words, not just on Emancipation Day, but an entire month of activities. And not just 1 month of activities, but 3 successive months of activities in 3 successive years. And therefore, over that period of time, he also outlined certain objectives that are in the address. So if the address is lined up, we could go to that.
My fellow St. Lucians, today, 1st August, is the anniversary of one of the most significant, if not the most significant event in our history. It was on this date, in 1838, that slavery was abolished in the British Empire, and the persons of African descent who were enslaved on the plantations in the British West Indies were granted their freedom. In St. Lucia, 13,285 persons from 384 plantations on the island were freed from slavery. I believe that in the past, the commemoration of this momentous event has not received the importance that it deserves, and for many, Emancipation Day has just been another holiday in St. Lucia, and not a day of reflection to the true meaning of the occasion. In our country, there are few organizations like ICA who over the years have consistently observed this anniversary. Today, I salute them. This message today from me as Prime Minister is a signal that from now, this government will make the 1st of August a major event in our national calendar. Our self-esteem, our dignity, our respect for the lives and struggles of our forefathers demand this of us. For while slavery was abolished in St. Lucia and other British territories 183 years ago, the mindset and racial attitudes that brought African people to the Caribbean and the Americas as slaves still lingers. In recent times, we have graphically witnessed in the USA the unwarranted killing of the African-American George Floyd in Minnesota last year, and that of our own Beaufort Jean the year before in Texas, and that of so many other African-Americans. These events have shocked the consciousness of the entire world, resulting in a universal cry for racial equality, human rights, and justice for all.
Welcome back. Following the introduction to today's discussion, we will be going around the table, if I could call it that, to invoke an ancient phrase that we use in discussions, to look at, like I said, from whence we cometh. How did we get here? What have we achieved during the first 2 emancipation months? What do we aim to achieve in the 3rd one? And of course, we would want to examine whether we should be looking towards a continuation of the Emancipation Month observations, because this year is going to be the 3rd of 3. So I think an appropriate area to start would be with the Executive Director of the CDF, which is the entity that is coordinating what is happening. We have a National Emancipation Committee as well, which we will be speaking about while we're going on. But at the end of the day, the coordination has to be done by the CDF with a number of other entities, including Events St. Lucia and the other member organizations that are represented on the Emancipation Month Committee. So to start off, Madam Executive Director, where have we come from and where are we? We will go into where we would like to go later, but your assessment of from whence we cometh and where we are now.
I mean, good morning, St. Lucia. Good morning to our friends in the diaspora. Good morning to our panelists. CDF in the past years produced the emancipation activities. It was done, but not in the way that we would have liked to have done it. When the Prime Minister, after the elections, he made a pronouncement of adding more meaning and depth to emancipation, and the CDF having a mandate for development and capacity development, we thought it sufficiently important to not go the journey alone, but to really speak to our partners, the agencies that had a stake in emancipation, and hence you have the Emancipation Committee. The CDF created the concept based on some of the objectives that the Prime Minister wanted to achieve. We looked at that, and a concept was created with a 3-year plan to execute. For the CDF, it is not an event. It is a re-education. It's a reclaiming who we are as a people, and to really raise that awareness amongst our people. Because I think far too often you hear emancipation, and in the minds of people it's a holiday, another holiday to hang out, to lime. And we felt that there was more to emancipation than just a day. It was a continuum. It is a continuous education of people, continuing to raise that awareness. And as the theme says, enkindling our consciousness. How do you do that? It is only through education and advocacy you can do that sort of work. And hence, the importance of having a committee with minds, varying thoughts, varying opinions, to come together, come around the table and really discuss where we thought we wanted to see the emancipation celebration or activities go from just being a day and to being a month-long theme of activities. And I think for us, we have touched the minds and hearts of people. And you could see the difference. I mean, when you have at our summer camp that we do, you have children talking about Petronil Dwin. It means that we have done something to change the mindset of the children. And if you can start at that level, it means that a lot of your work have started. Because young minds are impressionable. It is easy for them to go home and now share that story. And one of the things we did in the first year was to collaborate with Dawn French. And she did a children's book on Petronil Dwin. And that book we distributed during that first year of the 3-year celebration. We distributed that book at our summer camp. So the children now have this awareness of this heroine that had done so much for us as a people, our freedom. She fought the fight for us to take us to where we are at now. Emancipation is not just for us the past, not dictating our future, but informing our future and where we would like to see us go as a people. That's awareness of who we are, understanding our depths as a people, why we do the things we do. Why do we react to certain things the way we react to certain things? How do we think of particular things when we see them? It is only because our past has informed some of those phenomena. So for us, we think that my evaluation would be that we're not there yet, but it's a journey. And I think we have raised that awareness. We are beginning to enkindle the consciousness. When your ordinary man would pass by the murals and say, this lady there is Petronil Dwin, he did not know that before. And it is only because in the first year that awareness was there. People are beginning to have the conversations. And this is what we need to be doing. We need to constantly do it. And even beyond the month, we need to continue in everything we do.
Between the months.
Exactly. Our emancipation, the whole thing of emancipation should really pan out in our lives, in our interactions, in the way we do things. And for us, I think we have made a mark. It's baby steps. We will get to the journey at some point, but we have to continue that fight. The fight of our forefathers, our ancestors, we have to continue it. Not let the past hold us down, but let the past inform where we go from there and make decisions that will assist in our development as a nation, as a people, so that we can begin to appreciate a lot about ourselves, begin to look inward, and then tell our stories.
And certainly, as Madam Executive Director pointed out, in the first year, we planted the information about Petroni Dream. And in fact, that was the event that launched the Emancipation Month in 2022 on the 31st of July. And in the 2 years since, as she's pointed out, that seed has started to grow in the minds of youth at the summer camp, but also it is something that has grown from a concept to a vision. So that while I was speaking to a friend in England who was watching the carnival, in the background there were the CDC buildings with the paintings that came in the second year, including Petronile and so on. And I was saying to him that no, it's not just the buildings would not just repainted. There's a message, and it is part of that process. So from whence we cometh, as you pointed out, our past has to inform our present, and on that basis to inform our future. Our next guest today, as a member of the Emancipation Committee, Cecil Charles, representing the Archaeological and Historical Society, as well as the Anglican Church, and he brings to bear his representation everywhere else. But archaeology and history have an important role to play from whence we cometh, and the whole issue of being able to acquire that knowledge and transplant it into the minds of tomorrow's generation is one of the intents, I believe, in the Prime Minister's call in that first speech for us to take our history, archaeology, and Creole language back to school. Your input on where we are.
Okay, thanks everybody. When it comes to the Archaeological and Historical Society, you will notice that when the first event was held, we had what was called the Caribbean Ties Exhibition. And that actually paved the way in terms of the Caribbean Ties Exhibition was one that was done by Leiden University. It's a traveling exhibition, and what it did was to actually detail in pictorial form and in archaeological and so on, and in terms of a lot of the artifacts and so on, the movements of our early ancestors who came here. So it actually paved the way how they got here, what they encountered, and naturally what it actually showed is that with them coming, a lot of our cultural practices and so on, our way of life is actually coming from them. Of course, it did trace, the challenges that they did face and so on. And all in all, that was captured by that exhibition. The exhibition was actually held two places, both at the Anglican Church Annex, which of course is a historical building, and also at the Anglican Church in Vieux-Fort, another historical building. It is very important that when we talk about the churches, we all know, as you mentioned, when we talk about the Anglican Church, we're talking about Church of England. And naturally, the Church of England was part of the whole question of slavery. Eh? There's no denying it. But what the Anglican Church has sought to do is to actually make reference to them. Yes, that we were involved in emancipation, but we are about the whole question of reparation also. I mean, the whole training institution like Cogenant College in Barbados, that was actually a plantation, and that was left, of course, to the Anglican Church. Of course, he trains persons now and so on. And coming out of that now, you'd realize that even in terms of the new clergy that is coming out, it is more of a liberation kind of theology that is coming out. So it's no longer where you had the priests and them coming from England and so on and indoctrinating us with, and France, yeah, indoctrinating us with their culture. But now, because we have more local clergy, I mean, it happens within the Roman Catholic Church, it happens within all other denominations and so on. You now have the persons now who have become conscious and they are able to lead our persons. I mean, we have a very charismatic leader within the Catholic Church, Father Albert. You know, and he actually is able to speak to the persons based on the fact that he came from that kind of background also. So, as I said, the Anglican Church has played a role in terms of slavery. They have realized their mistakes and they are about to make amends to that. In the last 5 years or so, we have what is called the Anglican Mission, which is a 5-year point, and it deals with those kind of questions, being able to take care of the human element, the environment, and it is because of that marks of mission that we are able to look at society in a way, not just a building and a church service, but actually being involved in the community. And some people, for example, they did ask, why is the Anglican Church involved in a breadfruit festival? Why is the Anglican Church involved in a banana festival and the other things that they are involved in? And you notice that with the new leadership that we have in the Anglican Church, and somebody who came from that kind of background when we were growing up in terms of the liberation theology is now able to come and put it in where, of course, the Anglican Church is now being seen in a different light. And we are happy for what we are doing because we realize that we have to be part of mankind. We cannot just find ourselves divorced, just being there in that kind of class kind of thing away from society, because whatever happens within the society naturally affects the church itself. And if you notice, for example, the church where it's located, New Village, those kind of areas, we are very concerned of what is happening in those areas, and that is why we have taken on that strategic way of dealing with our marks of mission to actually empower our people within the church and also the community.
Thank you. That was Cecil Charles on behalf of the ANH Society, showing the interconnections between what we are doing on the committee, the connections between that and the church, the connection between the churches, the Anglican or Church of England's in St. Lucia today, operating on the basis of this renewal within the liberation theology aspect of churches, ensuring that they evolve closer to home than being in reflections of European or externally imposed religions. We go to our third member of the panel today. I described her as an independent member of the panel. That is not to take away from the fact that she has been with the Emancipation Committee from the very beginning, and her contribution has been seen over the 2 years, and still being here, she will still have to make those contributions that she has been involved with. And Raisa, the importance of queer and the importance of culture in the whole effort to put emancipation in its proper context will require a number of approaches which we have been using, which is direct communications, also being able to engage with young and old from a standpoint of trying to bridge that generational gap between what we might call pre-independence and post-independence St. Lucia. I have an article in the Voice entitled "Where Do We Go From Here with St. Lucia Carnival?" And a very active young person, very active and intelligent, looked at the first sentence in which I said yesterday, today would have been Ash Wednesday. And the next question was, what does Ash Wednesday have to do with Carnival? And I think that underlined the sort of mountain that we have to climb. But then we also have the language. We have the whole issue of being able to identify ourselves first and foremost, to be able to better understand who we are in a global context. So from whence we cometh to where we are, your views on where we have got to so far as a team on the National Emancipation Month Committee.
Merci à peu, bienvenue tout le monde. Je suis content ici pour discuter émancipation. C'est l'autre monde qui a dit émancipation, pas seulement en date. Et c'est l'autre occasion pour nous continuer la route pour l'éducation, l'identité nous-mêmes et puis le développement aussi. Puis ça, chaque éditeur nous voulait quitter l'émancipation à le premier jour en haut. Et nous avons quitté ici. Mais là, nous gardons.
Seulement pour holiday.
Oui, seulement pour jouer. Nous allons aller à la plage là, nous allons rester là, peut-être nous allons aller dans la fête, et puis ça, c'est tout. Mais ça, même quand nous montrons nos manières, nous pouvons continuer l'histoire pour dire nous pour qui est important, qui qualité expérience nous tenons, pas seulement bizarre nous, mais plus grand maman nous, maman ou qui manière de vivre dans cette qui pas libre. Et aujourd'hui, toujours, là, nous avons regardé des affaires comme des affaires de manière nous avons dit, ou servir nègre, toutes ces choses comme ça, quoi ils sont et qui manière qu'à pêcher nous, développer comme peuple, comme nation, manière nous avons ni relation entre l'autre, violence nous dans la société, des affaires justice, et puis un chaque bagage pour faire puis émancipation. When we looked at emancipation as a committee, we looked at it as a total experience, because what are we emancipating ourselves from? It's a total institution of enslavement, and enslavement was to destroy a race, a mindset, their history, their identity, everything about them, l'engagement. And so we are trying not just to reclaim it, but to continue our own civilization and process. And as a committee, on many fronts, from what you articulated earlier on, is to give it the significance. Not that emancipation was never celebrated before, but give it the significance, the continuity, the connection between all the other aspects of our lives, both the positive and those areas that we are still chained to create liberation. And so we've had partnerships with a number of institutions, from the Rastafarian Committee to the Folk Research Center, the churches, because it is a way of life that we are trying to create for our people, whereby we can truly realize our fullest selves as St. Lucians, as persons of the African diaspora, as Creole people as well. And this has been the real aim, to get to the heart of the matter of who we are, being able to appreciate who you are in a world that often tells you that being St. Lucian, Black, African is not to be human. So we're giving back our humanity to ourselves and to our children, as you rightfully said, because we often think that young people do not care, but they cannot care if we do not give the value that it deserves. And that is why it is significant for us to continue the emancipation movement, not just from an emancipation committee or organizational structure, but all groups in society have a responsibility, particularly given the information we have of where we've come from. And we're continuing a kind of baton race. So some people fought in the battlefields, on mountaintops, with knives and with weapons. We have to fight with education, with culture, with creativity, and with all the tools that we have.
Avec kono ton hod raisa, nous ne pouvons apprécier manière important pour savoir qu'on nous sorti avant nous savoir qu'on nous aller, et que là nous décider côté nous aller, nous ne pouvons faire chemin pour savoir qui manière nous arriver. Nous pour un petit pause à présent avec les nouveaux, nous continuer discussion à ce côté nous qu'on nous voulait aller et qui manière nous arriver là. We want to thank Raisa for that input that ensures that we never forget we are a bilingual nation, and the issue of language is very important in discovering who we are, and not only in discovering who we are, but also in discovering from whence we cometh, because that language is one that has survived the other two main languages that have crowded our linguistic development, i.e. French and English. Creole has outlasted and is more effective than my usual phrase, both two. We take a break and we'll be right back. Stay with us.
The act of being free from bondage. It speaks to a process of liberation from influence, control, or the power of another from slavery. It is freedom from a system or systems of oppression. Emancipation in St. Lucia, the Caribbean, or the West Indies spans continuous, courageous, and critical attempts by the region's inhabitants, beginning with the first peoples, the Amerindians, to take back their humanity and reject European slavery and colonization. Enslaved Africans increased and sustained revolutionary activities during the late 18th to 19th century throughout the region's French, Dutch, Spanish, and British colonies. These revolts also influenced unrest among the region's indentured laborers in the British colonies. The Emancipation celebration is a story of African and indigenous peoples' triumph over European white supremacy. It is to remind our people of the victorious struggles of their ancestors and to engage their input in building of a new society, a society representing their own ideals, own cultural, social, economic, and political development, which are the prerequisites for a free and independent nation and region.
Welcome back to our discussion today on the origins of Emancipation Month in St. Lucia. And in case you're just joining us, our panel includes the Executive Director of the Cultural Development Foundation, the representative of the Archaeological and Historical Society, and also another member of the Emancipation Committee. I'm your host, Earl Buske, for anybody who doesn't know. In this section of our discussion today, we will be displaying the actual calendar of events for Emancipation Month. As you would recall, or in case you didn't know, the Emancipation Month has been officially launched in terms of the launching of the calendar of events, so that we don't have to wait until after Carnival to know what's coming up for Emancipation. So the calendar of events is out. It is on your screen as we speak, and in this section of the discussion, we will look at some of the main highlights that have come out of the first 2 years of enkindling our consciousness. And as we said earlier, perhaps the brightest light out of that enkindling has been the information on Petronil Duin. And we will be discussing that because the plan is not only to put her name out there. There's much more insofar as what we would like to see. And in that regard, we will start off with the executive director. Petroni is a name. We've given her an image. She's got a face. What next for Petroni?
Well, I think it's for us, again, heightening the awareness. So as part of the legacy year, which is year 3, the intention is to erect a bust of Petronil in Dennery. It won't be erected this year, but the work will commence this year. And we propose that by 2025, the bust will be erected. Of course, it will be part of a bigger project that the Dennery constituency will be undertaking, which is a park in the same area that we did the first year, where we erected that whole history and about Petronil. So it is in that same area that a park will be created.
Close, approaching Mondo.
Yes. So that way, anyone, whether you be a national, whether you be a visitor, you have that opportunity to stop in Dennery and read and understand and learn who Petronil Dwin is. So it's not just for the people of Dennery, it is for everyone. It is in the same way you would go to a museum to find out the stories that are told about your people, about your country. This is what we intend to do with the bust that will be erected in Dennery, is to tell the story of Petronil Dwin and the period within which she lived, how she impacted our lives, because she's still impacting our lives, how she impacted our lives, and how can we use her example to build resilience in ourselves as a people, and to use her as a marker for not telling the negative side of the story. You have to remember it, but how can we use the positives, her strength, her resilience, to build on who we are as a St. Lucian people, strong and resilient.
And we have an image of Petronil which will be made available. We have to popularize it. So during our discussion, the image of Petronil will come from time to time. And like the executive director was saying, the project is not only about Dennery or for Dennery people, but for St. Lucia and from St. Lucia to the world. For example, in the story on Petronil, for the little that has already been put out, she made her name on the Fondor estate. We know Fondor estate as Fondor, but what is Fondor? What does Fondor mean? Fondor means the Valley of Gold. Why was that area called the Valley of Gold? So, you know, by introducing the story of Petronil, why she became so popular, what contribution, like the executive director was saying, she made back then in 1833, which still we still live with and have to appreciate today. When we plant all of that in the minds of young people at the summer camps, and not only in Dennery or Castries, but generally across St. Lucia, the next stage would be to take it to schools. And it is in that sense that, well, the students would want to know, well, if there was Petronil was in Dennery, they might have had other Petronils in other parts of St. Lucia, and the research orientation begins to build, and we have gotten to a stage where, fortunately, there are things like scholarships available in reparations and reparatory related subjects, which we would need to begin looking at, not just sending people out to go and learn, but being able to introduce in our schools, including the Sapa Louis Community College and the 20-something secondary schools. So while we're also looking at taking Petronil to the children, we all to the infants and primary schools, there's also a basis for stronger research at the secondary and tertiary level that will also branch off to other areas, because if we discover Petroni in January and on the 10th of August the Roseau will witness the launching of the story of Roseau Valley, which is a book compiled out of interviews with people from Roseau. A book has come out. It is already available online, and it will be officially launched on the 10th of August. When that happens in Roseau and Petroni is in January, you're going to automatically find Soufre wanting to know when are we going to be starting to come and talk about our own Juneteenth, June 19, 1796, which was in Soufre. So while we're talking about Juneteenth, America, Juneteenth everywhere, we have our Juneteenth, but how many of us know? In that sense, we move to our next presenter, Mr. Cecil Charles. You pointed out the church's assistance to our efforts to get people to recognize that getting to know ourselves is not only getting to know our history, but getting to understand the foods that we eat. Not only their nutritional aspects, but they also have histories. And as has been done with bananas, breadfruit, and châtaigne, and cassava, and mango, not only by your entity, but since the launch of the Emancipation Month, we have seen all of that happen with participation by the CDF and involvement by our committee. In that context, tell us a little bit more about the response to us telling people to better understand what we've been eating and we've known all our lives.
Okay, wonderful, and we appreciate that, because with what has come out actually, and I said with the help of CDF and all the other agencies and so on, is that it actually builds up on the whole question of the consciousness. And when we look at the byproducts and other things, because usually when people thought of the breadfruit, they usually felt you know, they go tosh or twa go tosh and fly salison. But what they realize that there are many things, other byproducts that could be produced from that. And of course also the whole question of the health benefits. So what we have done with the exhibitions that we have done so far is that we have brought in, for example, the health department, the nutrition department of the Ministry of Health, who actually have come in and showed the people the nutritious value of the breadfruits and all the other byproducts that could be made. Also what we realize is that persons have come to realize that there's a lot of wastage, because they are not just the inside of the breadfruit, but even the skin of the breadfruit could be used. You know, then you think of the whole question of, even in terms of art and culture, the art and the art itself, okay, and paintings and so on. You could actually use the dry leaves of the breadfruit to create a lot of decorations and so on, as is done with other plants and so on. So people have actually realized that there's so much that could be done. The teas, and that of course is the whole question of the health benefit, the breadfruit wine, the smoothies, so many byproducts, the ice cream, and all of course those things. When we look at it, your health is much better than eating a lot of the junk and so on. And what we have also do, even in the schools, what is being practiced, for example, what Archdeacon Evelyn Glasgow has tried to instill in the schools is that in moving away from the subjects and so on, that we begin to look at those things for the school children, because we know they get very hype and that kind of thing. And even in that, it also brings down the whole question of the importation bill. It also does that too. So that in itself is good. And we are continuing with it. This year, of course, the Breadfruit Festival and Shatai is August the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. And the reason why we're doing it 3 days, because people actually asked for that last year, and we are hoping that that will actually happen again. We ensure that we are going to give persons a good insight in what could be done, and we are happy for that. So All in all, come August the
On
1st.
the issue of bread nut or châtain,
You have a story.
yeah, no, I wanted to point out that we also grew up with an imposed culture that said, don't eat pineapple at a certain time, châtain will gonfle you, and those sort of things. Are they being taken care of insofar as explain to people why we need to remove those biases? You have 1 minute.
Yeah, and that definitely has been done, and so on the whole question of the education. So, for example, we work with the University of the West Indies in Trinidad, who actually have a breadfruit project. And Dr. D has actually been working with us, and he's continued to work with us even this year. So out of that, a lot of more education is coming out. A lot of projects will be coming out, I could tell you. And as we said, it is not a show for us. It's a festival. It is education. And I'm happy that we are not thinking about a one-day kind of thing. In terms of the total aspect of the whole emancipation, and we actually see that that is happening. And as we said, reclaiming the spirit and so on, that is what is actually happening. And we're happy that we are part of that whole exercise, that whole movement, so that we will better enable to move ourselves from that mental slavery.
And as the ED says, the issue of continuity, the need to not see this as an event, an August 1st holiday event that comes every year, or an August month that comes every year, but the continuity on how we connect what we learned this year to next year. In other words, between August 31st and July 31st. We take our final break, and when we come back, we go around the table again to look at what is to be done and where to begin. Stay tuned.
The act of being free from bondage. It speaks to a process of liberation from influence, control, or the power of another from slavery. It is freedom from a system or systems of oppression. Emancipation in St. Lucia, the Caribbean, or the West Indies spans continuous, courageous, and critical attempts by the region's inhabitants, beginning with the first peoples, the Amerindians, to take back their humanity and reject European slavery and colonization. Enslaved Africans increased and sustained revolutionary activities during the late 18th to 19th century throughout the region's French, Dutch, Spanish, and British colonies. These revolts also influenced unrest among the region's indentured laborers in the British colonies. The Emancipation celebration is a story of African and indigenous peoples' triumph over European white supremacy. It is to remind our people of the victorious struggles of their ancestors and to engage their input in building of a new society, a society representing their own ideals, own cultural, social, economic, and political development, which are the prerequisites for a free and independent nation and region.
Welcome back to our final section on today's discussion on the origin and actuality of Emancipation Month observances in St. Lucia. Our next panelist, Raisa Joseph, will take us through some of the events that we have been advertising to remind you or to inform those of you who haven't had a look at our calendar. Raisa, tell us a bit about some of the main events we can look forward to this year. Can we look forward to more Petroni?
Oui, nous avons appelé à Supertroni, mais nous avons l'autre activité pour discuter aujourd'hui. Quand nous disons l'année salaire, l'année de legacy et puis education. Nous avons regardé qui manière nous ça fait significance émancipation et puis éducation à sous affaires bizarres nous ça dit oui pour génération pour venir. And so there have been a number of activities, some that we are aware of, but we've never connected it with emancipation, and some that are new that are meant to create, as we said, that level of consciousness, education, and continuity. Laos, for example, is an emancipation legacy. This year it will be celebrated in Castries. So nous savons tous les années nous avons Laos, mais nous pas qu'à demander qu'on nous pour nous qu'à dire vive Laos, ou peut-être pour nous qu'à chanter La Guanunia Paulea, La Guanunia Paulea. But all of our flower festivals form part of that emancipation legacy, and we want to make sure that there's a connection to that. We also have a special lecture. À Soulan Kweola, c'est différents gains qui fait contribution pour nous nier langue Creole, because we know that there are African legacies within that. That is also going to be taking place on the 29th of July, where there's going to be a rebroadcast on the 1st of August. Another signature event which is critical is the Rabbit Uprising in Soufrière. Et puis, comme ça, nous travaillons et puis Soufrière Regional Development Foundation, Fondation pour développement Soufrière côté, nous avons regardé qui manière Joseph Nissi, c'est bizarre nous, yo goumé pour émancipation. L'année en charité nous avons dit bagay qui pas vrai. Et quand nous aimons dire c'est Joseph Nissi pas goumé pour rien, et que ça pas vrai. And through this uprising, we are going to have our children, our people experience what the process was actually like in the 1700s to reclaim space for us to be free, to live as we so choose in this present day. So the past is always present. It informs what we do, who we are, how we think, how we stand up for one another, ourselves, and all of these activities from Laos on the 30th, the language lecture on the 29th of July, and rebroadcast again on the 1st of August itself in Soufrière. All of that information can be found on the Government Information Service page and also the Cultural Development Foundation pages. You can call as well if you need further information, but there are a number of activities, and we also know that the Rastafarian community and other fringe events are going to be happening throughout the island throughout the period leading up to emancipation and after.
And of course, folks, as she pointed out, very important that we begin to give enough attention to the Rabbit, called the Rabbit Uprising. It wasn't an uprising, it was a revolution. Historically, in 1796, slavery was abolished in St. Lucia for 1 year until 1795 to 1796. Abolished for an entire year, and that was before, long before, 8 years before the Declaration of Independence of Haiti in 1804. And from Soufrière, as a result of St. Lucia being liberated with assistance from France, because that was just after the French Revolution, and with assistance from Martinique, Guadeloupe, and other areas, St. Lucia played a very important role out of here in that 1 year in developing the Garifuna movement in St. Vincent, and further in developing the movement in Grenada. So St. Lucia actually exported revolution from Soufrière during that 1 year. And that history is not written because it was not documented in the way that the French Revolution or the Haitian Revolution were documented. So there's a lot for us to learn, and Rabbit doesn't belong to Soufrière, it belongs to St. Lucia, it belongs to the history of the Caribbean and the world, and will help put a lot more in context about St. Lucia's role as a base, as a platform for resistance during the slavery period. We were coming to the end of today's discussion, and I wanted to indicate across the board the number of other entities that are assisting in making Emancipation Month possible every year from 2021, 2022, 2023, and 2024. At the top of the list is the Cultural Development Foundation, the Archaeological and Historical Society, the National Archives, the Folk Research Center, the Soufre Regional Development Foundation, the Soufre Action Theatre, the Ayanola Council for Advancement of Rastafari, the Ubuntu Collective, the ECSL,
Events Company of St.
Events
Lucia.
Company.
Events Company of
the
St.
Events
Lucia.
Company of St. Lucia. I said so because there's a ECSL having to do with the banks. The Anglican Church, the Soufre Constituency Council, the Creative Industries, and the National Reparations Committee, which I represent on the Emancipation Committee. And one of the activities I can say we're working on and we would like you to look forward to, hopefully we can state it on the 31st of August, is the adoption of Emancipation and Reparations anthems. Our hope is to adopt Nous Travail pour Rien, which is 40 years old, as a regional Creole reparations anthem. We want to adopt grandfathers back pay by the mighty Choctaws as a regional English reparations anthem, and at home we want to adopt Herb Black's Reparation Now as our national reparations anthem. We are in touch with Mr. Felix Henderson, the leader of CASAV, based in Paris, and he has agreed to provide us with whatever permission we would need insofar as Nous Travail pour Rien is concerned, so we could look at the possibility of actually having CASAV and Felix Henderson here for the 31st of August, which is also the International Day for People of African Descent. And we might end up by pointing out that unlike last year, the important thing about the International Day for People of African Descent is that earlier this year, Dr. June Suma, Her Excellency Dr. June Suma, was appointed as the chair of the Permanent Forum, the United Nations Permanent Forum for People of African Descent, in which case she is not only representing St. Lucia and CARICOM, but people of African descent worldwide at the United Nations as part of that permanent commission, and she too will be part of that activity. So we look forward to being able to deliver on that project, and having said so, I want to thank the Executive Director of the Cultural Development Foundation. We also want to thank the representative of the Archaeological and Historical Society, and we want to thank all of us, including Raisa, as members of the National Emancipation Month Committee, and we urge you to stay tuned. Restez avec nous, gardez pour ça qui venu, suivez ça qui venu, apprendre qui ça nous ka garder pour partager avec commencer savent avec apprécier qui ça nous a fait aujourd'hui, c'est parce nous comprendre qu'on nous sorti avec conséquences qu'on nous savons qu'on nous sorti avec nous savons côté nous hier aujourd'hui, c'est comme ça nous ça fait plus bon plan pour savoir côté nous aller demain. Thanks for tuning. Until our next discussion, I'm Earl Buske on behalf of Nation Beat.
The act of being free from bondage. It speaks to a process of liberation from influence, control, or the power of another from slavery. It is freedom from a system or systems of oppression. Emancipation in St. Lucia, the Caribbean, or the West Indies spans continuous, courageous, and critical attempts by the region's inhabitants, beginning with the first peoples, the Amerindians, to take back their humanity and reject European slavery and colonization. Enslaved Africans increased and sustained revolutionary activities during the late 18th to 19th century throughout the region's French, Dutch, Spanish, and British colonies. These revolts also influenced unrest among the region's indentured laborers in the British colonies. The Emancipation celebration is a story of African and indigenous peoples' triumph over European white supremacy. It is to remind our people of the victorious struggles of their ancestors and to engage their input in building of a new society, a society representing their own ideals, own cultural, social, economic, and political development, which are the prerequisites for a free and independent nation and region.